0200 hours, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The Ali Burke-class surface combatant USS Spruance holds its patrol line in a corridor that spans 29 kilometers at its narrowest point. This narrow gap serves as the primary gateway connecting the southern waters to the Mediterranean via the Suez. A radar contact breaks across the Aegis display console. An insurgent anti-ship ballistic projectile lifts into the upper atmosphere, accelerating toward Mach 5. The Aegis combat system processes the trajectory data in milliseconds and commands a single SM-2 interceptor from a vertical launch cell. The intercept completes at altitude just seconds after the initial detection. The defending vessel spends $2 million in that single exchange. The launch site in Yemen spends roughly $100,000. According to operational figures released by naval analysts, Aegis-equipped platforms in this region maintain a success rate of approximately 85% against ballistic threats of this class. The intercept removes the immediate danger, but the cost ratio underneath that success reveals a fiscal pressure that compounds with every launch cycle. This financial friction sits at the center of the events unfolding on the morning of June 8, 2026, when a formal declaration of closure turns this pressure into a strategic confrontation. The morning of June 8, 2026 begins with a televised announcement from Brigadier General Yahya al-Sarraj. He declares a total restriction on all navigation associated with Western interests across the waterway. This move responds directly to the ongoing naval interdiction of Iranian ports. That interdiction severs a vital resupply pipeline the Yemen-based movement depends on for guidance electronics and solid fuel motor components. Coastal batteries positioned along the shoreline receive targeting coordinates within hours of the statement. Surface drone units prepare for deployment. According to tracking data from global shipping monitors, at least 23 commercial vessels change course within 90 minutes of the broadcast. The lanes those ships abandon carry over 10% of global maritime trade. This sudden mass rerouting causes transit insurance premiums to climb by 400% before the sun reaches its zenith. United States Central Command activates its highest threat response protocols. Allied command rooms shift to continuous satellite monitoring. Naval planners organize 15 commercial vessels into secured convoy formations. This proves the coordination infrastructure built under international task forces can mobilize in minutes, not hours. The geography of this waterway gives the insurgent forces a structural leverage that no diplomatic treaty can easily dissolve. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait forces every transiting vessel within range of shore-launched systems at distances below 15 kilometers along specific coastal sectors. This geometry means a closure here does more than disrupt a single lane. It severs the fastest maritime link between the Indian Ocean and European markets. Vessels that refuse to run the gauntlet must instead circumnavigate the entire African continent. This detour adds roughly 6,500 kilometers to each journey. A container ship burning 80 metric tons of fuel per day absorbs that detour as roughly $1 million in additional operating cost per voyage. These losses accumulate across thousands of annual transits, creating a heavy economic burden. The pressure generated by the terrain is automatic and constant. It functions as a weapon of attrition that requires very few actual launches to remain effective. A secondary factor arrives simultaneously from the Persian Gulf. Iranian officials signal a potential closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This is a direct retaliation for the Western pressure on their own maritime hubs. The Strait of Hormuz handles approximately 1/5 of global oil traffic daily. With both maritime choke points under threat on the same day, energy analysts note that markets face a dual corridor disruption, without a historical parallel in the modern era. Tanker traffic on both routes drops sharply as risk assessments are recalculated. The USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group receives orders to transit around the Cape of Good Hope. This choice keeps $20 billion in naval assets clear of coastal missile envelopes. However, it also removes the strike group from the immediate theatre for nearly 2 weeks. This leaves the remaining vessels to absorb the full defensive load during the most intense phase of the crisis. The tactical balance of this conflict is defined by a ratio that influences every command decision. An explosive surface drone costs between $80,000 and $120,000 to construct. The SM-2 Block 3B interceptor used to stop it costs approximately $2 million per round. More advanced variants, like the SM-6, run closer to $4.2 million per unit. An Arleigh-Burke-class platform carries 96 vertical launch system cells. These cells must hold a mixture of rounds covering anti-submarine warfare, land attack strikes, and layered air defense needs. No commander loads the entire magazine with interceptors. A dedicated campaign that forces a crew to expend a dozen rounds per day will empty those magazines far faster than the industrial base can refill them. The current manufacturing rate for these sophisticated interceptors is measured in dozens per month, while the threat can be manufactured in the hundreds. This disparity in production capacity creates a replenishment bottleneck that shapes the entire naval strategy in contested littoral waters. If you are enjoying this analysis, please subscribe for more global defense updates. Once a vessel's magazine levels reach a predetermined floor, the ship must leave its station and transit to a specialized facility for a reload. The theater holds only a single port capable of handling these high-explosive transfers safely. This concentration creates a specific point of vulnerability in the sustainment chain. Naval engineers address this by utilizing a revised engagement protocol. Crews now prioritize the Phalanx close-in weapon system for slower, lower-altitude threats. The Phalanx utilizes a 20mm Gatling cannon that fires 4,500 rounds per minute. It engages targets at ranges up to 1 nautical mile. Each engagement costs approximately $7,000 in ammunition. By substituting this ammunition burst for a $2 million missile, the fleet preserves its most expensive and capable ordnance. This keeps the deeper magazine inventory available for ballistic threats that the gun system cannot physically stop. It is a necessary shift from a missile-first mentality to a layered resource approach. Defensive actions alone cannot stabilize the region. This is why the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli is deployed to the zone. F-35B Lightning II aircraft launch from its deck to conduct armed reconnaissance. These aircraft use advanced radar systems and secure data links to locate mobile launchers hidden in the mountains. Pilots can find these targets while staying outside the reach of ground-based air defenses. Once a launcher is identified, the aircraft strikes it before the insurgents can move to a new firing position. Researchers using satellite imagery report that 4 mobile launch sites are neutralized on this day. This offensive suppression is the only way to reduce the total volume of incoming threats. It takes the burden off the Aegis vessels and slows the rate at which they must use their limited interceptor stocks. By striking the archers rather than just the arrows, the fleet regains some control over the tempo of the engagement. The logic behind the Blockade Declaration connects to a broader geopolitical calculus. Tehran cannot engage in a direct conventional war against Western navies without risking an escalation they are not prepared to fund. Using proxy forces in Yemen allows them to impose massive costs on the West, without risking their own surface fleet. The 400% jump in regional shipping insurance premiums translates into higher prices for food and fuel across Yemen. Every week the disruption continues. Billions of dollars in cargo value are delayed. This creates a ripple effect throughout global manufacturing. Factories waiting on parts are forced to slow production. The working assumption is that economic pain will eventually force a diplomatic retreat. The Western naval response, which focuses on convoy protection and launcher suppression, is a direct test of whether a high-tech navy can outlast a low-cost insurgent campaign. The physical environment of the coastline creates a sensor performance hurdle that complicates every engagement. Mountains rising over 2,000 meters along the shore scatter and block radar signals. This creates a screen of clutter on shipboard displays. A low-flying cruise projectile traveling just above the waves can hide within this clutter. This reduces the time a crew has to react. For a high-altitude ballistic target, the window is usually several minutes from detection to intercept. For a sea-skimming threat hidden by the terrain, that window can drop to under 30 seconds. This is not just a technical nuisance, it is a tactical advantage provided by the Earth itself. If a sensor cannot see through the noise created by the mountains, the most advanced interceptor in the world is useless. The terrain essentially acts as a free stealth coating for the attacking force. The solution to this environmental hurdle is not found on the ship itself. It comes from the Cooperative Engagement Capability Network. This system allows shore-based sensors and airborne platforms to share a clean, decluttered picture of the battle space. By using sensors at higher altitudes, the fleet can look down over the mountains and see the threats that sea-level antennas miss. This off-board processing significantly extends the detection range beyond the physical horizon of surface vessels. Operationally, this restores the reaction window back to a manageable 60 or 90 seconds. This gives the Aegis system crew more time to successfully manage the engagement cycle. Sharing data across the entire force makes the network much harder to overwhelm. If one ship's radar is blinded by the terrain, another platform or an aircraft can provide the targeting data. This distributed sensing is the most significant tactical adaptation of the current era. The intensity of the mission reaches a peak during the afternoon hours. Planners from multiple nations coordinate their movements. They share intelligence and decide which ships will cover which sectors. A vessel with a deep magazine might stay in the open water to handle ballistic threats. A smaller frigate with a rapid-fire gun system might stay closer to the coast to handle drone boats. This task matching ensures that no single high-value platform is forced to use its best missiles on cheap targets. According to tracking data, commercial ships that stay within these protected convoys recorded no successful hits on this day. Despite 11 attempted attacks, the defensive screen held firm. This success is not just about technology, it is about the discipline of managing resources in a high-threat environment. Looking beyond the immediate events of the day, the struggle in these waters signals a fundamental shift in maritime security. The era of assuming safe passage for commercial trade is over. Future naval deployments will likely feature a much higher density of point defense systems and electronic warfare suites. The focus is shifting toward integrating directed energy weapons to complement rather than replace large and expensive interceptors. Laser systems, which cost only the price of the fuel needed to generate electricity, could solve the cost exchange problem permanently. A laser does not run out of ammunition as long as the ship's engines are running. It also travels at the speed of light, making it the perfect counter to the compressed reaction windows caused by coastal terrain. Several experimental systems are already being fast-tracked for permanent installation on the next generation of surface combatants. The reliance on satellite data and networked sensors also highlights the importance of space-based assets. If an adversary can blind the satellites providing the look-down capability, the fleet returns to the 30-second reaction window. This makes the security of orbital sensors as vital as the thickness of a ship's hull. We are seeing the birth of an integrated form of warfare, where the sea, the land, and space are linked in a single tactical loop. The lessons learned during this blockade will dictate how ships are designed for the next 30 years. High-capacity magazines, rapid reload capabilities, and automated gun systems are no longer secondary features. They are the primary requirements for survival in the littoral zones of the 21st century. As the sun sets over the Bab el-Mandeb, the data from the day's engagements is already being analyzed at naval research centers. The conclusion is clear. The defense held, but the margin of victory is tied to efficiency. The insurgents have proven that they can turn a few $100,000 into a multi-billion-dollar headache for the world's most powerful navies. The response from the West has been to move toward a more networked, more intelligent form of defense. It is a game of move and counter-move, played out in the most crowded shipping lanes on Earth. The blockade may have failed to stop the flow of trade on this specific day, but it succeeded in forcing a total re-evaluation of naval doctrine. The record of these 24 hours now stands as a blueprint. It shows exactly what is required to keep the global economy moving when the world's narrowest gates are under siege. The strategic takeaway for the next generation of planners is that technology alone is not a shield. The shield is the ability to adapt. Whether it is using a 20mm gun to save a $2 million missile, or using a data link to see through mountain shadows, the win goes to the side that manages its resources most effectively. The Blockade Declaration of June 8, 2026, was officially targeted against Israeli-linked shipping in the Red Sea. Instead, it became a classroom for the future of naval combat. The tactical record is now a baseline for every future conflict in a world where cheap drones and expensive geography define the rules of the sea. Trade continues to flow, but the cost of that flow is now permanently visible in the magazines of every ship on station. The corridor remains open, but the price of entry has changed forever.